Hello there! Welcome to The Collision. After decades of fan clamoring and rumors, everyone's favorite old space hermit is crossing the dune seas and coming back onto screens for the hotly anticipated Obi-Wan Kenobi miniseries. I've seen it, you've probably seen it, so let's talk about it. So this review, I'm a little late on getting the review. I know the show ended a week ago. Was thinking maybe I wouldn't do a review, but hey, I love Star Wars. You probably love Star Wars, and I wasn't going to miss a chance to talk about more Star Wars. And this is a show I was excited for. I was kind of fell in the camp of I was intrigued. Give me more Star Wars. Didn't really know what all they would do with a Kenobi show, and if it would kind of be worth exploring. Although I did think that there's that character, and there was stuff that definitely intrigued me and some of the potential. So I was definitely looking forward to this. I enjoyed, gathering my family together for our weekly dose of some Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I think overall, there's definitely a lot to enjoy and appreciate about this series. I liked it quite a bit, even if I do think that it didn't quite kind of hit the lofty potential that it could have. So let's kind of talk about this. We'll get into just sort of my general thoughts on the show. And then also, I think the show has a lot of kind of Christian themes and things that to kind of engage with it and think about, even if you've already seen the show, so we'll get into that too. But just kick it up by the main thing about the show. Ewan McGregor, he's sort of he's the draw, bringing him back into the iconic role. And again, arguably, I think he's probably the greatest actor, not named Harrison Ford, to ever kind of grace the Star Wars universe. He's great in the prequels. Definitely one of the highlights, the things that people, even if they don't like the prequels themselves, they usually praise his role. And he's great. He is awesome in this show. He kind of seamlessly falls back into character, even if he's depicting kind of like a more a broken down, kind of wearier, a bit older version of the character. But he never kind of loses the essence, I think, of who Kenobi is, even if it's sort of a different time that we haven't seen, kind of a more hopeless time. Again, every time he's on the screen, I was invested, I was engaged. It's a joy to kind of have him back in the universe. I do think, I don't think many people will have a problem with McGregor's performance. The other kind of surrounding characters, unfortunately, is not quite the case. Probably the two divisive characters. Again, this show now has been done for a week, so you're kind of seeing some of the feedback and stuff as this thing's been airing. Kind of the portrayal of a young Princess Leia, and then the kind of the newly introduced Inquisitor character, Reva. People have kind of mixed opinions on these characters. I kind of I'm divided as well. I think the young Leia, I liked her. I know some people didn't like her. I think sometimes she's annoying, but hey, I'm a father of two kids. Kids are annoying sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that. All kids are annoying. But I do think that the actress, that she did a good job capturing kind of that spunky headstrongness that of Carrie Fisher's Princess Leia. Reva, I don't know. I know people have had issues. I know there's some controversies and stuff, and just sort of some ugly and venom thrown around that there's just really no place for. For me, it was just the characters. It wasn't even necessarily the performance of the actress. I think a lot of the issues with her character, the reason it just didn't kind of resonate with me, was just sort of the script and kind of where her storyline goes, or kind of where it doesn't go. This nothing about the character. I kind of kept wanting to kind of get invested in her story, and just never did. And I think maybe that's a segue to I think a lot of the show's problems. Again, I really like the show. We'll get in a second some stuff that I really did enjoy with the show, but I think the stuff that I didn't maybe appreciate, or I think that the show didn't do as well, I think most of those can be traced back to the script or the direction, not really like the actors. I think a lot of the action scenes outside of like the Kenobi Vader scenes, which are all fairly fantastic, a lot of the action just sort of falls flat. It's just not as exciting. Now, I don't think it's well directed. I think some of the plot stuff, there's this, again, I know this is like a space wizard show. I can suspend my disbelief, but a lot of there's a lot of too many plot kind of conveniences. Like I think at least 4 times in the show, a character sort of defeats their enemy and then kind of inexplicably just sort of walks away and lets them live instead of finishing the job. And again, I can kind of buy that once or twice, but it just kind of kept happening kind of because, hey, well, we need them to fight, but we can't have anyone die yet. So let's just sort of let them live. And so again, there's, at least to me, there was a little bit too much of that. But I think maybe my main problem with this series, which I did enjoy quite a bit, is just that I think it wastes too much time, which for a 6-episode short season with fairly short episodes, it just kind of can't handle wasting too much time. And you kind of see that all throughout. Like, I think like the Inquisitors, they spend a lot of time in this show kind of setting at the beginning, kind of setting up the different Inquisitors and their kind of the office politics, and they're trying to get Vader's favor, and you kind of go to their castle and stuff. And then all the Inquisitors is sort of they're gone for the last third of the show. They never kind of complete that storyline, never come back to them. Again, I know those characters go off and cartoons and other shows and stuff, but at least for this show, it's like, hey, if we're not going to kind of keep them involved in the show, then focus on the stuff that matters. Again, I think Reva kind of suffers from the same fate of her character just sort of, this doesn't, her arc doesn't go anywhere, or at least not anywhere I think is interesting, where really you could almost pull her out of the show and not change much of what happens in the narrative. So I think this show could have focused, kind of cut out some of that fat and focus on the good. Because again, I think it's sort of a shame, because when the show is good, it is really good. And I think kind of for most people, like the heartbeat of this show, the best this has to offer is definitely the Obi-Wan and kind of the Vader / Anakin Skywalker dynamic. Really, everything about those two characters and that relationship is great. It's a joy. It's a total joy to see Hayden Christensen back as Anakin, and just sort of the screen time, like the scenes, especially I think it's like episode 3, and then kind of the final episode where they really interact. Like, I think arguably some of the best Star Wars material since like Return of the Jedi. Just those scenes. Again, they are captivating. Both characters kind of are crushing it, and just sort of the thematic stuff and kind of unpacking and moving the story forward. Again, whenever they're on screen, this show is really good. Whenever they're not on screen, I think this show starts to falter a little bit, which again makes me maybe wonder if this would have served better as like a movie or something, where you just sort of narrow in on that kind of the real good stuff and cut out some of the fat. As far as kind of content to consider with this show, it's Star Wars, so kind of the same content that you consider with all Star Wars. You don't have profanity, even though I know some of the more recent movies kind of have a little bit of profanity, which is too bad. The show, at least that I remember, no profanity, no sexuality. Violence, there's a little violence. Again, it's just Star Wars, so it's not like bloody necessarily violence. But again, Vader's menacing, especially kind of his intro scene. He's killing people. He's snapping a kid's neck. You kind of see like the Order 66 kind of flashbacks, and he's kind of, there's kind of violence towards children. Which again, this became kind of a controversial thing given all the cultural stuff. So there is a little bit, but again, I watched the show with my 2 7-year-old boys, and there's nothing in that like concerned me, or, they might find it frightening, but again, nothing like gratuitous. And again, the Force, and this is a Christian review. I know some Christians kind of have issues with the Force and sort of this kind of pantheistic kind of spirituality and stuff, mysticism. I've never had a problem with that, even though I know some do. But I kind of suspect at this point there's been enough Star Wars. We sort of know where you fall on that issue. But again, this is a show about the Force, so the Force is definitely in it as well. As far as kind of the themes and stuff, kind of things going on beneath the surface of this show, I think there's a lot. I think maybe even the strength of this show is kind of how it's dealing with some more meaningful stuff. I think, again, I wish they would focus maybe a little more on the stuff, because I think it is kind of meaty and a lot going on, rather than some of the more kind of, hollow action or spectacle of these side characters and stuff. But a couple of the things that I thought as a Christian that I found interesting, one theme is this sort of doubt and despair. At this point in the story, Obi-Wan is a very broken man, although not in the same sense that Luke was in The Last Jedi, where he's just sort of real cynical and just sort of angry. I think the nuance of this sort of theme in his characters, that he hasn't really lost faith in the Force, or he doesn't doubt the existence of the Force. He doesn't even really doubt the goodness of the Jedi Order. It's more that he doubts himself. He kind of doubts where he falls now, and his own failures as a Jedi. It's a lot more internal. I think a lot of these stories, a lot of these Hollywood stories that deal with sort of the issue of doubt and stuff, is almost exclusively is God real or is God not real? Is there supernatural? Is there not? And I thought this is maybe a more meaningful and kind of a unique spin for Christians that will be relevant to Christians. Is this sort of, hey, it's not necessarily doubting whether this stuff is all real or what's true, but just sort of my own, inadequacy or how I relate to that. So definitely think there's some stuff there for Christians to kind of dig into. Another one is kind of comes from one of the quotes that they used in like the first trailer, kind of by the Grand Inquisitor, kind of describing sort of a Jedi, where he says, "Hey, the key to hunting Jedi is patience. Jedi cannot help what they are. Their compassion leaves a trail. The Jedi code is like an itch. They cannot help it." And the quote to me kind of brought to mind John 13, 34, 35, where Jesus saying, hey, they will know you're my followers by your love for each other. And just sort of drawing parallels, I think the Jedi have always kind of been like a loose metaphor, or at least a parallel to like religion or Christianity. And the prequels kind of showed some of the abuses and historical stuff. But I do think that there is sort of some inspirational stuff there as far as like, hey, what are, Jedi, even if they want to hide, even when they're, enemies all around them, they just can't help but to sort of leave this trail of compassion, this love for people, this help. And I do think Christians can kind of can use that to, as a mirror for what kind of trail are we leaving as Christians? Are we leaving a trail of compassion? So definitely stuff there. Maybe the last one is this sort of sin. Sin destroys. Sin kind of corrupts, and I think you kind of see that with Darth Vader. Obviously, his main story arc is reserved for the original movies, so they can't do a whole lot with his character. But I do think you see some meaningful transition with him, and I think you kind of see it in sort of two bookend quotes from his first interaction with Kenobi to his last, where the first interaction, when kind of a horrified, kind of appalled Kenobi asks, what have you become? Vader responds, I am what you made me, which is just a chilling, kind of horrifying line. But you do see kind of in the end, again, I don't want to spoil necessarily all that happens kind of after their final climactic moment where Vader says, I am not your failure, Obi-Wan. You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did. And I do think kind of as a Christian, that there's stuff in there to wrestle with, to think through about just sort of the nature of sin. I think, blaming the world for our problems and that, that they made us do this, where ultimately, according to Scripture, we will be the ones that stand before God in judgment and kind of give an account for our own life. And I do think kind of for Anakin, sort of that dehumanization where he kind of turns into Vader, and at least in this show, is him kind of realizing, hey, it's not just everyone, it's not the Jedi, it's not Obi-Wan, it's not all these problems, that this is a decision I made, and kind of I got to live with the consequences. So in the end, I like this show a lot. Again, I'm the target audience. I love Star Wars, so I'm pretty easy to please with this. I do think it's a definite kind of improvement over the Book of Boba Fett, even if it doesn't quite kind of reach the high standard of the Mandalorian. But I do think it does justify. It does have a story to tell. It does add to the kind of the expanding Star Wars canon. So again, I was definitely satisfied with this. But hey, let me know what you guys think. If this is a show you were excited about, if you're a big Star Wars fan. I know some people were let down by this. Some people really loved it, especially if you're like one of those people that really love the prequels and kind of got to see some of that back in live action. Love to have that conversation. It's never a bad thing to talk about Star Wars. So let me hear your thoughts on that. Again, if you haven't done so, I encourage you subscribe to our channel, like this video, join with what we're doing here at the Collision. Got a lot of stuff coming throughout the rest of the summer. Would love to have you be a part of that. But stay safe, guys, and continue to collide with your world for Christ.